experimental design is a narrative design studio. We engage in a design practice, which I call world building, which came directly out of Minority Report and films that I'd designed in the past. And so we use this design process of world building and storytelling to think about the future and to be able to kind of enact vision. So the first time when Timur and I first spoke, it was a lot to do with just how do you research, how do you actually start to convey or gather the knowledge and the language you need to actually be able to talk about the subject. So that experimental part was very focused on that, essentially on research, on the vision and how that might play out. So I have two roles in this sense, and as a production designer, I went from creative director at experimental and then rolled into production design as the film production geared up. Virtual production has become more and more of a presence, I think, throughout media. It's the first time that I've worked on a virtual production stage, so it was very interesting at the very beginning just to walk in and see the Amazon team show us what it was capable of. And in this case, I'm not sure how else you would do what we were doing, because what the volume allows is a level of interaction for the actor, for Chris, in real time with lighting that is kind of impossible to reproduce in the way that it moves randomly through space. To be able to do that in a physical space in real time is remarkable. I mean, completely impossible, of course, with any other platform. For us, the very interesting balance is at what point does a set need to be physical, and at what point can you hand it over entirely to the digital? And much more than usual, I think the volume's been used as a set. Because when you think about Mandalorian or a lot of the ways in which, say, science fiction uses the volume, uses virtual production, it's kind of through a proscenium. You always have a mid-ground context. In this case, the walls of the digital walls are the walls of the set. Once you get used to that idea and you stand in there and you see the light moving and you see the depth within the design where you can see into other rooms and you have the texture of the walls, etc., it's remarkably convincing, I think. Screen life, I think at its simplest, is a screen-in-screen play out of a narrative that is entirely contained within the monitor, as it were, within the TV frame, within the screen itself. So it's a two-dimensional development of narrative in the most interesting way, in a way that we understand through social media, through all the ways in which media can feed us in a single digital space, the way we basically live now. But for Mercy, it's radically different, because those traditionally, in screen life terms, traditional screens within screens are now moving through physical space, through volumetric space. So that ability to push those sources around and reframe them until they completely take over the frame and have them between two actors or two characters and have them become really a much more dynamic component, I guess, in the storytelling is probably the real difference. I mean, obviously, Timur will be very nuanced about all of the ways in which it works and doesn't work for him. But this film, what's different and in many ways more difficult is that you have so many cameras. In some of these scenes where you have a dozen cameras playing at the same time, you're really going back to like having to consider every inch of an environment. There's really no way of knowing that the cameras are not going to see something. When you have a camera on a robot dog moving through a homeless camp, you know it's going to see everything. So, and then you have a drone, and then you have surveillance cameras. And that has been fascinating to me, because the logic of the film is that you have to find a reason for that camera view to exist. It has to have a material kind of logic. So if you need a shot over the shoulder of a flying quadricopter, you've got to find a way to put a camera there that isn't just some, a kind of traditional third-person camera, but it's actually a character. And so in that case, we had to kind of invent a role for a second drone as a kind of police dog that goes along with the police car, the quadcopter, and is actually a kind of companion in order to be able to get any shot you need, because now you have the complete freedom with the camera. What I love about working with Timur is he's completely intuitive and instinctive, and he is very confident in his own reactions and his own intuitions. We are all moving targets in Timur's field of view, because the ideas are constantly spinning out, and I love that. So I think that, and it's a very complex film with layers. Just in as many cameras as there are ideas that are required for every single camera, and these many mini scenes that are going on. And so what I would say is that the balance and the development of the narrative with Timur is constantly just trying to find that delicate edge of reality and science fiction, and it's very stimulating working with him. I mean, he's a lovely man, and his mind never stops working. And I think it's woken up this team working with him every day. I think this is a film, certainly it's very provocative. It's certainly making us think differently about what it means to have the relationship we do with digital technology and the digital world and media of any kind in our daily life. But I think it's going to really demand that we think more carefully about the amount of information that's out there in the world, because there's no question that what the film is portraying in some form or another already exists, and in another form is going to exist, whether it's a full, legal system that can take someone on death row and actually make a final decision about their execution. That may not be the final outcome, but everything around it is possible, and you are not going to come out of this movie being complacent about AI and digital technology.
I think it has very close parallels to, the truth of the world that we're living in now, the rise of AI and technology advancing at such a fast pace, and none of us really knowing what our fate is if we don't step in and control that. But the idea that a court system can be run by AI, I think is a truth that's very close to home. The film is foreshadowing things that are already here, and maybe by the time it comes out, I'm quite scary to think of it that way, but yeah, lots of parallels to how we're living now and how we're propelling very fast into this unknown future. Reading the script really made me aware of how important it is to, think about the decisions we're all making globally with this technology that is so powerful, and the moral and social consequences of where you place it, and it's really in our hands. So the film is, to me, felt very important, very current. Timur Bekmambetov is our fearless leader. He was one of the reasons that I was so excited to read the script, because I knew he was involved. He's an auteur in so many ways. He has such a unique style. He's, from day one, from his first film, that really put him on the map, like Night Watch and Day Watch, to his more recent stuff, Profile, he really is a visionary, has such a singular vision, and to handle the world and again, to think in a future sense as a filmmaker and handle this future world and have a vision for it. He's kind of mapping out a visual landscape that none of us have really seen before. So I was very excited to work with Timur and really get to step into his mind and into the way that he was going to, God, create this world for us. And I think it's been really incredible. Stylistically, it's very unique because we go from, one take will be using, there'll be a handheld camera, then I will be filming myself with an iPhone camera, then there'll be body cameras on police vests, there'll be security images, and there's, it's the voyeuristic culture that we're in, that, there isn't many parts of the day that you're not being filmed, observed, monitored, self-induced observation as well. And I think it's really interesting to take an audience into a style of filmmaking that they are actually living in themselves, and to allow them to kind of step back and observe the way in which our world works from the voyeuristic perspective, and knowing that they are participants in it in their daily life. So I think that's just so interesting. It's so exciting. I play Nicole Roven. She is married to Chris Roven, and what's interesting about her is that you meet her, you think it's classic, wife of a dashing leading man, but then what starts to unravel through her story, and she is not who you think she is. A lot is revealed about her as the film goes on. So your hero is, honoring his wife, and then he has to kind of find out some very uncomfortable truths and where that places him morally. And yeah, I think just to have a real honest relationship on screen, I really loved that aspect. With Chris, it was very easy to go into the great, wonderful light moments of marriage, and the complicated, complex, dark moments of marriage and family, and the complexities of life and the pressures of a crumbling society with, with a rise of crime. And yeah, I think again, it's a relationship that really mirrors the pressures that most young couples globally will be under once, if we do not take the reins back from some of this decision making that is being made for us, I think, in terms of AI and all that. Chris Roven is played by Chris Pratt. He is a classic anti-hero. I think what's so wonderful about his character and the way he plays it, Chris Pratt has such natural warmth and energy, and so to layer it with this suspicious character who morally has made some bad choices, but I'm a real believer in redemption, and I love a character that you can't help but love. They have made mistakes, they are human and have flaws, and I think what's so wonderful to observe, when I see him play this part, is the layering of who he is as a person. He's so such a good human being, such a good person, and to have this morally ambiguous character that he's chosen to play on top of it, I just think it makes it so electric on screen. It makes it really interesting for the audience he's really someone you want to root for, but he does pretty bad things. And I think audiences, we're in the age of the anti-hero, and this is a classic one, I think, that they'll remember for a very long time. I hope audiences walk away reflecting on their own life, their own decisions, their their moral choices, their conviction about those choices, and that it is important to get all sides of the story. And, you know, we can tarnish each other with one brush, and as we find, there's always more to the story. So I hope they enjoy going to an amazing movie and coming out and feeling morally conflicted and feeling as though they're going to ask bigger questions about the choices they make, the way they interact with AI, and how they protect themselves moving forward. And yeah, just enjoy being reminded that actually, you know, the through line to us all is the humanity aspect.
The AI has immediate access as the judge, jury, and executioner to constant evidence, whether it's, you know, looking at a computer, looking at an iPhone, looking at a camera that's in the street. And the evidence is immediate, and so therefore you can show so many different things to an audience by using the ScreenLife format. And that's one of the things that we really took advantage of, because we have numerous screens that the audience is aware of, and then we actually, you know, focus on some of them to make sure they're getting the information. But it's a big, huge information download to the audience almost consistently. In the very near future, crime has become rampant for whatever reasons, having to do with loss of jobs and an impossibility for criminals to get convicted, particular homicide, where getting a jury of 12 to unanimously convict has become very, very difficult. And so essentially, the governor of California and the California Supreme Court have kind of changed the rules by saying, you know, instead of making you innocent until proven guilty, if there's an 82% chance that you are guilty, you have to go to trial, and you're guilty until proven innocent. And when it comes to homicides, since the AI judge is judge, jury, and executioner, if you can't get to a verdict that's under 82, which makes you presumed innocent, if you hit 92 in 90 minutes, you're dead. Well, the interesting part about Chris Raven, if you go into his backstory, is, and you see a bit of it as part of the ScreenLife images that come on to sort of tell you how Chris got here. The tragedy for him was that he lost his partner. He's a police officer and then became a police investigator, and he lost his partner by a jury not willing to convict a guy who was guilty. And so that guy got off, and not only the emotional loss of losing his partner, but knowing that his partner was actually killed by somebody as opposed to it being an innocent crime, had a very, very strong emotional effect on him. And he became depressed, and he became an alcoholic. And while his wife and his daughter were trying to help him through this process, it wasn't actually working. And he would constantly fall off the wagon and go on benders. And he wakes up one morning and he's actually in the mercy chair. Now, the strange thing is, he was one of the strongest proponents of giving the mercy trial its opportunity because of the loss of his partner. And now he's in danger of being convicted by the very thing that he brought to pass. He's great to collaborate with. He comes up with great ideas, You know, he's also extremely interested in making sure that when it comes time to promote what he's worked on, he's out there doing it. He's just a lovely guy, and it was great because he and Timur had this really great relationship on Wanted, and they wanted to repeat it. So it was wonderful working with him. She came here and she just was, you know, amazing in terms of her immersing herself in what it would be to be this AI judge who was part of this process that was still, you know, a bit of a program that was evolving, but there were still individuals who she pronounced guilty. And, you know, one of the great things that we've already seen about AIs is they learn. And it's interesting how they learn, and that's something that we get to see as the movie progresses as well. So it was very interesting watching Rebecca evolve during the course of that 90 minutes. You should be seeing this in the theater on the biggest format you can, which means you need to do a large screen format or IMAX format. And in fact, we've also now decided that we're going to have release the movie in 3D as well, because just seeing all that imagery come off the screen at you is pretty exciting. Actually breathtaking, I have to say.
I got a script sent to me, and I thought it was great. It was a really inventive story, unlike anything I'd read before, which is saying a lot because I read everything, and this was just really caught my attention. I worked with Timur on Wanted years ago, and so I was dying to get back in the ring with Timur and work with him again. And I just really loved the story, and I loved the screenplay. So that's how it came to me. Chuck Roven, of course, is an amazing producer, Oscar-winning producer, and so the fact that he was involved was really exciting to me. And yeah, I came on very, very early and got to be a part of putting the whole thing together. I would call it a multi-genre film. You've got a courtroom drama, you've got a thriller, you've got an action film, and it's in this screen life, which in a way is a genre of its own, curated by Timur, our fabulous director. He's done Searching, Missing, Unfriended, Profile. These are films that are in this screen life genre, and this really takes that genre to the next level. We're utilizing various camera angles and screen recordings that exist in the modern world in putting this thing together. And so, yeah, it's really a cool and compelling way to tell a story. My character, Chris Raven, is a detective in robbery and homicide in Los Angeles, LAPD, near to distant future, and he's a guy who's on trial defending his life, and this mercy court uses an AI judge, jury, and executioner. You essentially have 90 minutes to prove your innocence, and if at the end of the 90 minutes you can't prove your innocence beyond a shadow of a doubt, you are executed in the chair. So the film itself is the 90-minute trial. So all of the evidence that's being provided for the trial is stuff that would exist in what's called the LA Municipal Cloud. Essentially anything, any bit of surveillance, any FaceTime video, any email, any text, any voicemail, any video anyone's ever shot on their phone, anything that lives in the cloud can be used as evidence. And so we also shot all of that, and a lot of that was shot on iPhones and Ring doorbells, a lot of GoPros simulating a Ring camera or the body camera of a police officer, or a drone camera, dash camera, these types of video feeds that are so ubiquitous in today's world. Judge Maddox is this AI apparition, and so she exists on a screen in front of me, but she can also exist in various other ways. She's a voice, she's an omnipresent machine, a quantum computer that's having access to LA Municipal Cloud and can show me any number of dozens of different videos all at once. So she's morphing, and as you're getting the perspective of her onto me, which is our main A-camera perspective, not dissimilar to this camera right here that's pointing at my face, you also had some interesting artistic shots that sort of take the screen life genre to the next level. And if the camera moved around me like this, then you would see an actor standing in front of me. So it was important that I be isolated in the room so that you can create everything that wasn't created in camera in the volume using CGI in the post-production process. I play Detective Chris Raven. Right? I'm a robbery and homicide detective in Los Angeles. You see through the evidence that's presented in this 90-minute trial at this point in my life that over the course of maybe 20 years, I've gone through various steps in law enforcement. I'm a sergeant, patrol sergeant in the LAPD, and I worked my way up into detective, and then ultimately become the detective, the head detective in robbery and homicide, who's putting people in this very chair, the Mercy Court. So I'm responsible for 8 people going to Mercy Court and essentially being executed. And so this is my job, is to put people in this chair. So imagine the irony when he wakes up to realize he's been accused of murdering his wife. Now, Chris Raven has a secret, and that is that he is a closet alcoholic. He's in the program, but secretly been drinking, and so when he wakes up, he's blacked out. He does not know what happened. He knows that his wife is dead, that he's accused of the murder, and as far as he's concerned, from the point of view of a detective, it very much looks like he committed this crime. And so he has 90 minutes to use the LA Municipal Cloud and Mercy and Judge Maddox and her quantum computing skills to try to prove his innocence. Is he innocent? You'll just have to watch the movie to find out. The near future world of Mercy, yeah, so this is like near to distant Los Angeles. We're saying 2029 or 2030. And as the story is told, LA is not in a good place. AI has continued to grow exponentially. Violent crime, drug abuse, and capital crimes have gone through the roof in LA. People are now relegated to these red zones where they're like slamming drugs and committing violent crimes against each other. And in this world of Los Angeles, a new governor has come in, and through overwhelming support, people have passed the Mercy Court as a way to deter violent capital crimes. If you commit a crime in Los Angeles today, you will be dead tomorrow. I think it was the result of, the human system of justice had been flawed, and so AI has now infiltrated the justice system, and we're now using the binary value of facts to prove innocence or prove guilt. There's no human emotion. There's no legal corruption. There's no lawyers, using loopholes. Essentially, if you're in the Mercy chair, which was designed to deter this type of crime, you are guilty. And it's your job. You get 90 minutes essentially to try to prove your innocence, but basically Judge Maddox makes her decisions about the people sitting in the chair before they're even in the chair. And for the most part, they're guilty. Chris Raven, who there's a great arc there with him determining whether or not he's guilty and being forced to come clean with his demons. But to me, the most incredible arc is the character of Judge Maddox herself, who feels like a cold and calculated computer program, but through the course of the film, you realize is a sentient being that is so wonderfully played by Rebecca, this character who essentially is trying to hide her humanity. There's a bit of humanity creeping up inside of her. We discussed it in the rehearsal process and came to this conclusion that she's developed empathy, which was probably in her program some sort of virus. And empathy as a virus is a really interesting concept. And yeah, she's trying to. She wants to stay alive, and she wants to learn about human beings. And the only interaction she's had with human beings have been the murderers that she's put to death. And so she grows and learns to trust her own human intuition versus just looking at the facts. And yeah, it's really neat. I like that about her character, and I like what the film says about AI. It's incredible. We join in this incredible and poignant global discussion about AI and the role of AI in our lives and how much power we give to AI, and in a way setting a precedent around what we should allow AI to do, because we cannot allow for AI to, despite the fact it's so incredibly convenient and efficient, we can't allow it to supplant our own human intuition and human dignity and human emotion. I think he's visually a genius. He's, going back to like his first films before Wanted, he's clearly a visual master. Definitely collaborative, open to ideas, has a clear vision. There's a bit of magic that happens when you're making a film, when you get on set and things start to happen, and then you start messing with the formula a little bit to just see what happens. Like if you're in a chemistry lab and you just started throwing chemicals together to see what would happen. There's a little bit of that in him. There's a little bit of chaos to his style. He likes to mix it up and come up with an idea. He's not afraid to listen to other people's ideas, and if he likes them, he tries them. I think in this film, we experimented a lot. I think he shines, especially in the post-production process, and so I'll be really curious to see what he'll do, how he's going to create the vivid imagery that gives the audience the perspective into the mind of a quantum computer, the mind of an AI being, a sentient AI being. What does it think like? What does its imagination look like to the human eye? And we'll see that. I think it'll be a really, really awesome to watch him take this screen life genre and just blow it up and take it to the next level in a big blockbuster way. It's engaging, it's action-packed, it's original, and it'll look great on the big screen because all of the post-visual effects of a person on trial being exposed to what a quantum computer can think and show you at any given moment, it should be a real spectacle. And so I definitely think this is a great film to see in theaters. And I think the bigger the screen, the better, because Timur is truly a visual artist. He's a creative genius when it comes to visual spectacle. I think I said physical spectacle, which is a new thing I just invented. And you're welcome for that. I want you to be like, I do not know how this movie ends. I don't know. It's a real mystery. I think people will be caught off guard. I don't think you're gonna be able to predict what's happening. And, it'll be engaging. It's a film that's super entertaining. It flows really quickly. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. And you just don't see what's gonna happen next. You don't see it coming, which is really cool. And so I hope people feel that. This was an opportunity for me to play a character that's a little different than anything I've ever done before. I think there's a level of darkness to this character that I got to lean into and have a lot of fun with. What's neat is you witness the life of this guy's 20 years that you've seen, that you get to see through the course of this movie, and you see this arc of him being a guy who's more closely related to the guy that you would see if you sat down and had a beer with me or had a cup of coffee with me, a little more irreverent and fun and lighthearted, but you see something happen in his life that turns him dark and turns him into someone that you think is capable of murdering his wife out of a fit of drunken anger and rage. And so that was a challenge for me, and I hope audiences like it. My name's Chris Pratt. I play the character Chris Raven in the film Mercy. I'm a robbery and homicide detective on trial for the murder of his wife. And you will find out through the course of 90 minutes whether or not I did it. And if after 90 minutes I can't prove my innocence, I'll be killed by a quantum computer. Good luck, Chris Raven. Your trial starts now.
In a lot of ways, it's a classic courtroom drama, but it's surrounded by this futuristic, technological kind of murder mystery. And we use the technological scenario, the highly advanced courtroom, to investigate this murder. And the setup not only of the script but of the stage that we shoot on creates this new kind of thriller. Timur has a sensibility that I suspected when we first met, but he comes from Russian theater. And theater recognized theater. Like, he is a very dramatic, Timur has a very dramatic sensibility, and he is not letting the technological advancements that the script requires kind of tamp that down. He loves grand gesture. He loves kind of maniacal twists and turns, and provides all of us with the opportunity to explore all of those possibilities. This production is being filmed in a way that I have never experienced. It speaks back to the theatrical nature of our director, who allows these scenes to unfold while running, at the most I've seen, 15, 16, 17 cameras at once. Traditional film cameras, set up in a style of a closed-circuit television, body cameras, GoPros. There is nowhere to hide on this set. There is nowhere to rest. And when a scene has started, you are off to the races, and you are being filmed from every angle, every angle imaginable. It's almost difficult to describe. You'll probably just have to see the movie. The 360-degree immersive space that we are in, known as the volume stage, it can be this empty void, and with the snap of a finger, we are in downtown Los Angeles. We can go anywhere. This is not just a projection. This can be a moving action environment that the actor can interact with. There's definitely a learning curve that goes along with figuring out the space and figuring out the angles and the depth perception, all these things. But it's unlike anything I've ever seen. Working with Chris Pratt has been, I don't know, it's felt very natural. It feels like he feels like someone that I've known for a very long time. And when I show up to work and the person across from me is excited and invested and connected and arriving as fully as he can in every single moment, it makes the job exciting, fulfilling, and pretty easy. I mean, Timur has wild ideas about the state of the world, the way it should be, the way it could be. And he has a sense of adventure in his decision making that you know, can only work. He's the only person who could have made this movie, to be as flexible as he is and as mobile as he is, and, you know, running 150 cameras all at once and being able to put together a story in a way that is cohesive while gathering all this footage and piecing it together in a way that is dynamic and exciting. It should be a one-of-a-kind experience. I hope that the audience, when they watch this movie, become very weary of their own certainty. It's usually when I am 100% certain of something that I am flipped on my ear. And this, I think, is what this movie is about. There is no certainty. There is no absolute truth, no matter how it appears. And to stay flexible in your understanding of the universe or of the world around you is a very valuable trait.
Well, my roles developed over the years. I originally started as a stuntman and then went into stunt coordinating. Then the next progression is really to second unit directing. And action designing is something I've been doing more so the last sort of 10 years, which encompasses a little bit more than that. So we start very early on in the production and really try and help, as a writer does or a production designer does, try and help the film get molded in the way the director wants to do it very early. So really it's a great job. I get one of the best jobs, and that's to design all of the action in the film. I think it's incredibly topical of its time right now. And so Timur has a really incredibly interesting view of, you know, modern American society. And so he's really showing in a totally different way in Mercy. And so it was a really interesting project. It feels very much like the possible future if, you know, if the country does a few wrong left turns or right turns, whichever way it goes. And so I think it felt very real. And that was the whole basis of how we wanted to approach this film, is that everything is reality-based, and really all of what we're doing is greatly based off reference material. So everything we're doing is very based off reference material that we've been studying over the last sort of 6 months altogether. So what's interesting about the whole Mercy world is that it's really a very advanced found footage film. So you can only view, or the audience will only be able to view the film through the available cameras in that world. And so it's body cameras, it's helmet cameras from the police, dash cameras, red light cameras, security cameras, and people's just pedestrian views, or people, you know, with an iPhone looking at something interesting and they take it. So it's only available from those. So really there are no traditional film setups, there's no objective camera. So it has to be seen by literally, you know, a camera that's been placed somewhere for another reason. So Chris Raven's played by Chris Pratt, and this is my first project with Chris, and he's come into it in, you know, every possible way you'd want a lead actor to. So he's been involved in all of his own big sequences. We had a fantastic fight sequences, or an arrest sequence, I suppose, in the bar with him. So his character, this is the whole arrest for him going to Mercy, and he's been, you know, suspected and charged with the murder of his wife. And so we find Chris, his character, drunk in a bar early in the morning, and he's approached by 3 police officers that literally, they know him, he knows them, and they've got to bring him in. And that escalates into, again, this real big one-up of a fight, where he's basically, he resists them in the bar, he ends up climbing on tables, knocking down projectors, using chairs as weapons. There's a chase out the back, and it accumulates with him being grabbed again on vehicles. He breaks away and tries to actually get into a passing vehicle to drag the person out, and they finally have to subdue him with batons and tasers to bring him down. And Chris, you know, we got him involved in that early. We did a couple of days rehearsal with him, and he literally did every single shot in it, which worked out great. So he's been very good with that. Look, it's really interesting. This is one of the first major projects I've done where we've done a lot of LED wall work. And so it works really well in the sense that you can bring an outside set that you normally wouldn't be able to get to shoot, but you can shoot it, you know, all day. Particularly also you can shoot the time of day all day. So the hard thing about our truck chase is that Timur really wants it to be at dusk, at sunset. So literally there's that incredibly small window of time, which is really probably 10 minutes in reality, just before the sun goes behind the horizon. And so that's a whole, nearly the third act of the film is all at that magic hour time. So that's why we had to do our truck chases. We go to downtown LA and lock down whatever we can, and we spent the last 4 Saturdays from sort of, you know, pre-dawn until literally a couple of hours after dawn, shooting everything we can. So bring that now world into here, but you can control the light all day in here. So you can match the light exactly how you want it to be, you know, for that particular sequence, which we want it to all be at sunset. This could be a start of a totally different way of filming some of these sequences, and I think the impact of when we're even watching the shots that we're doing ourselves, it feels so incredibly real. I think the reason that we're going to draw people in is that it feels so real. Our society's changed so rapidly, even in the last 10 years. So there's literally nothing now that you cannot see on the internet. So when there's a feeling of watching something that is real, it has a different emotional and psychological feeling. And I think what we've been trying to encapsulate is shooting it in that way so that you're feeling like you're watching something that you really don't want to be watching. And so whether it's a shootout or whether it's an accident or it's a chase, you want to feel like you've just that fly on the wall that just happens to be in a police helicopter watching a chase, or you're a security camera that just happens to catch some you know, an incredible fight in a bar. So that's the feeling that we want to try and achieve, and hopefully that's what will get people to go out and watch Mercy.
Experimental design is a world-building studio, and world-building is a really holistic process. We take a deep dive into all aspects of a world, in this case, the world of Mercy, which was a sort of dystopian-ish Los Angeles around 2030. So we started to look at, obviously, artificial intelligence, general intelligence, quantum computing, and what the impacts of quantum might be on artificial intelligence's development. We were looking a lot into spatial computing, because we were also thinking about designing the interface that Chris Raven would be sitting in front of. But beyond the technology, we also looked at what the impacts would be on transportation, on city systems, on culture, on the culture of work, on everyday existence in this world. So we really started with a really broad research, really broad set of experts that we spoke to try to ensure that we could actually justify what the film was putting forward as something that you'd sit there and believe that it's really near future. So part of the role of experimental was also to think about the interface that Chris Raven would be sitting in front of. And we started to think about it as a flat screen, but then we realized we had this opportunity in the volume to build something in Unreal, in a game engine, where we could place all of these screens and we could start to prototype what it would look like and feel like. And then to put the chair in the volume and have these screens start to move past Chris, or to sort of show what Maddox wanted to show him at which time. It was a really interesting way to have real-time access to make changes in real time, and then to see these screen interfaces be really dynamic and really active. So the screen life storytelling style is one that feels very personal, almost as if it's a first-person perspective, like you're actually seeing through the eyes of the main character, through the protagonist. And it feels very much like everyday life right now, our screen life in real life, on our computer screens, on our mobile phones. With Mercy, though, I think that because we are dealing with so many different camera interfaces and so many different data points, and all of these are really active, it feels really frenetic and really visceral. And having screen life be three-dimensional and moving in different ways and spatialized as we enter this sort of phase of spatial computing, the screen life format really seems to be moving into the spatial computing at a really interesting time for all of us. When we met with Timur at first, we really started to think about all of the different media, all of the different cameras, the world of Mercy. Again, we were really thinking about the logic of the world, thinking about every aspect of the world. And his vision really seemed to be grounded in reality, in something that's believable, even though it's sort of science fiction and a bit dystopian, to make sure that we weren't really making gross overestimations or underestimations about what might be possible. It was really fun to work with Timur. He's extremely thoughtful. He's extremely philosophical about this script and about the big, big questions. So we put together a roundtable of experts and we had them read the script, and we went through that with Timur and really dug into the questions that he had about how viable this future would be and how to make it feel real, and also think about what steps led to that. So it was a really fun experience to work with Timur and see how much he really wanted to engage with the experts and engage with what's really happening and what's likely to happen in the next 10 to 20 years. So the research that we did at Experimental for the film really started with the research into artificial intelligence, into the next 20 years of artificial intelligence, but also into the visual aesthetics of the film and what artificial intelligence might look like, right? We're trying to make an artificially intelligent agent feel almost human and believable. And there's so much processing that goes into how Maddox is making decisions about Chris's life. Like, artificial intelligence has a human's life in their hands. So we were thinking a lot about how to visualize really complex systems. So in parallel streams, we started to think about quantum, AI, spatial computing, politics, what would have to happen for this to happen in California in the next 10 to 20 years, and then also building a huge sort of visual research library, a lot just around Maddox and what that process would look like, but also a lot around what the sort of visual aesthetics we could gather from what that research is, in addition to trying to design the interface that would show all of this to Chris in real time. Who or what Judge Maddox is a really interesting question. So Judge Maddox is a quantum artificial general intelligence. It's a kind of artificial intelligence that we don't have yet, but we expect in the near future, in the next few years, that we might see an artificial intelligence of that caliber. Maybe not quantum, but we had a really interesting discussion internally about, is Judge Maddox an it, or is Judge Maddox a she? And Rebecca Ferguson is Judge Maddox. It's still a really interesting question about how we personify our artificial intelligences and how to be able to build a sense of trust with artificial intelligence. We give it this very personal, human avatar. And as you know from our tools like Siri and Alexa, these are often female voices. It does give a sense of trust, but when Judge Maddox needs to build trust or not with the person on trial in front of her, this very human form of Maddox, even though it's this very super intelligent artificial intelligence, is meant to make the person on trial feel like there's an actual human that has their life in their hands, not a computer. I think what was special about making this movie is that it feels so timely, but also just far enough away that we have time to think about, to consider, and to maybe check what we want in our near future. I think that the screen life format for this film is really a great way of portraying this, especially since we're sort of already bombarded with so much information. But when we have even more information, even more data that we can pull up in real time, I think that visualizing that for people to really have that visceral sense of what our futures could be and what our media consumption could be and what artificial intelligence is going to do to change the way that we interact with the world. I think that the film really captures that, but also in a really emotional action film.
A shocking, realistic, oh my God, this is probably going to happen eventually type of script. And I really enjoyed I love Timur's vision because I'm familiar with his work. So I immediately kind of got the split screens, the fast moving pace of the movie, and just the plot of it. It was, you can identify with each character of the script, and it's not anything that's far-fetched, so I think it's eerily close to reality. So I really enjoyed every moment of it. Every character had their own kind of backstory that you can imagine because they're familiar people. They're real type of people. So it's something like this, because it's real life, there is obviously there's some humor, because, sometimes humor gets us, even though this is such an intense anxiety, panic, thriller, drama, have to focus type of film, it is quite sci-fi-ish as well because it's in the near future, but there are little funny parts. There are little parts where you can kind of laugh in the face of danger, in the face of death, in the face of all these inappropriate type of situations. So I believe it has a little something for everyone. Diallo, and she don't like being called Jackie, so don't call her Jackie, it's Jack. She has her own, and I have made a big backstory for her. She has her own personal reasons why she needs this. She needs mercy to work. She needs justice. She needs to see people who need to be off the streets and get their punishment, because she has had a life experience of seeing people being able to walk away free that's done unjust things to her. So she is motivated with Chris. They're really good partners together, and they have a bond and a partnership that only two people who really understand and respect each other, especially in this line of law enforcement, can have. So that's why he reaches out to her. That's his partner. She knows him and his wife, Nicole. She's seen the family dynamic. She knows the struggles that just Chris has been going through. It's kind of like the quote-unquote bro code. Like, she tries to help him, but, she also has her life in his hands and vice versa when they're out there doing their job. He's always happy to come. I mean, everybody's happy to be here, but he's always excited. He's always looking for a better way, a different way, just to amp up the scene, to really be immersed in it. I love how we can collaborate off of backstories between myself and his character to really create that real bond that people can feel and see, that authentic type of bond you have when you have that type of job and you need that connection and that type of partnership. But it's amazing working with him. He's always singing and joking around, and he's been, his character's going through some things, so it's just really cool to see him come up with the ideas and bounce them off back and forth. And also, he can take a break and talk about other things, but he's here to work. He's here to put in the hard work, and it's really awesome to be able to work with him, for sure. Oh, Maddox. First of all, I love the name Maddox. That is like the coolest name for a judge. It's so welcoming but intimidating at the same time. And Rebecca Ferguson, good Lord, I wish we had more time to work in person together. That's another thing. Not working face to face with people the whole time is a different experience. So we've bonded by talking about that necessity to feel and see and taste and smell the person in front of you. But she's amazing. She is hilarious. Again, she's amazing to work with. She's so good. I mean, she, in a drop of a dime, she can turn from Rebecca Ferguson to Judge Maddox, and to be able to, really engulf herself in what an AI, non-human but closest to human as possible entity, having this judgment, happening to do this, and bringing so much humanity to this. She does an amazing job. It's really, really breathtaking to see her work. I don't think I've ever seen that man in a bad mood. I don't think I've ever not seen him smiling and enjoying his job. He's very, very clear in what he wants to see, and he's also always creating something else. He's always seeing something else in it. Down to different little, you have to really pay attention to catch. Maybe there might be something that somebody has that might be like a telltale sign of where they stand in the film. He's amazing, man. It's been a really, really cool experience. From the first conversation we had about the film and about the character, my character, Jack Diallo, and he kind of was like, "It's up to you to make her backstory. I want to know why she needs mercy. It's on you." And I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna be great." You don't get that. You usually get, this is who it is and this is what I need you to do. It was like, this is the story. This is what I want to tell. This is what we're gonna tell, and this is your character. And go. Like, you tell me, I need her to have a reason. I'm like, okay. And it's really cool for me as an artist, because I love creating backstories, and it's a huge part of this entire film and this story and this whole Mercy Court and why it began in the first place. So it's been a pleasure. It's been a huge learning experience.
Yes, the director is Timur, and he's amazing and so funny. I love having him. He's a very hands-on director, which I really appreciate. He's always right next to the camera, and I think his vision, he has such a specific vision that he sticks to, but he's also so open to new ideas, which is amazing because it feels very collaborative, but also like we do have a line that we're following. So it makes filming very cohesive with everyone. There's FaceTime cameras and then body cam cameras and security camera angles and God knows what else. I think when we were filming the other day, I heard someone say that there was 40 cameras rolling for the scene. But it was crazy because there was no camera in the room with us that we could like see. It's not like someone's following us around with, a camera. So it felt like doing the action scene, it makes filming feel a lot more like real, I guess, because like a camera isn't in your face. It's just like in the corner of the room and you don't see it. And it makes it a lot, like, very immersive. I think I've seen other found footage films, and it makes it immersive for the viewer, but also as an actor, it's made it a lot more immersive for me. Yeah, so I play Britt Raven. I am Chris Raven's daughter, and I guess I would describe her as sort of like she's going through like a bit of a rebellious phase, I guess, which is sort of a result from her parents fighting all the time, and like they're on the brink of divorce, and her dad is very distant from her because he is a recovering alcoholic, and that was really hard on the family. So she's just a teenager trying to figure out, I guess, who she is and how she fits into her parents' lives. Oh, Chris is great. It's weird because how the movie is shot, we like actually barely end up working with each other, which is, I've never experienced anything like it before, and it's really funny. But when we do shoot together, when we get that chance, he's so great, and he has so much positive energy that he just fills the room with whenever he comes on the set. And he's always, singing something or cracking a joke. So it's great. Working with Timur has been awesome. I think he's so funny, and he has like the most like random stories about like Kazakhstan and like being in Russia, and I love hearing them because it's always like, what? Like why? How did that happen? Like, oh my God, he's the best. And he's so funny and sweet, and patient, and a very hands-on director, as I said before, which is just, it's really nice to have that, to have the director like right there for any questions or any directing that needs to be done. And I think he's the perfect director for this because, I mean, it's kind of his like forte. Like this is like what he does, and it works for him, and it works so good, and I think it's so fun. I was so excited because I think he did a movie called Unfriended, and when I was like 16, me and my best friend would watch it every single time we had a sleepover. It was like our sleepover movie. So I was like, oh my God. I texted her right away. I was like, you'll never believe who I'm working with. So he's been great. I love him.
The writer's name is Marco Van Belle, and I think the first time I read the script a few years ago, it was a page turner, right? It was literally just going through every moment. Everything was very exciting, and because it just sucked me in from the first page. And as soon as that happened, I knew I was like, I'm gonna need to call Timur and see if that's something that could be up his alley, because I know exactly this type of movies he's trying to make. So it's kind of how it all started, and how we started working with the writer. But I think as soon as we read the script, it was just immediately we knew this is the one that we want to pursue further. A big theme in this movie is, you start the movie kind of realize or having AI and human working against each other in a way, and then as the movie progresses, they come to realize and know we need to work together, we need to work alongside each other, we need to coexist with each other, right? And I think that's a very important message in the movie, because a lot of times, like I said, everyone's worried about their jobs, about the danger of AI, is it going to replace humans, and that's, and I think in our case, we managed to kind of, tell a story where, you watch the story and you realize, okay, there is a world where we can coexist, where we can work together, find that kind of a common ground to help excel. The director's name is Timur Bekmambetov, and I've been working with Timur for around 7 years now, and I've been involved in his kind of evolution of the Screenlife format that he's been working on over the past few years. And Timur's the type of person that is always excited about something new, something different. If you watch, obviously he's done movies like Wanted, Abraham Lincoln, and Ben-Hur, right? And obviously all of them are very different. But what excites him most is like, let's try some new challenge. Let's try something that's never been done before. Let's try, some new technology, and that's always something that has been an ongoing conversation over the years that I've worked with him. And every time we worked on a project, it was like, okay, let's try something new, right? Let's not do something that everyone else does. And that has been his motto all the time. And then when we found the script, obviously he's worked on Screenlife movies where like Searching and Missing and Unfriended, where the whole story takes place literally on a computer screen. In this one, we obviously took it on a whole different level. I think between all of us, I think we wouldn't really call it just a Screenlife movie. I think it has elements of Screenlife format with a hybrid approach. And when we found the script and we started talking about how do we want to evolve this and make this feel bigger and feel different, feel unique, and given that it takes place in the near future, that's when we thought, okay, what would the near future be, right? What did that look like? What technologies are available around us right now that we can try and build our world, so it's close, so it's similar, and I think one thing that was very important in the process as we're putting this movie together, I think, is really relying on real life references, right? Whether it's story references, whether it's, we have a quadcopter in the movie, right? So do we have quadcopters exist today? What do they look like? What technologies are available right now? How can we try and use what exists in today's world and to have it be as near to our world as possible? So the Mercy AI Court, it's set in the near future. I would say, let's say 5 years from now, and it's a world where the government has lost control of the judiciary system. Right, crime went through the roof, homelessness went through the roof, and the government is trying to figure out a way to keep everyone in check, basically. The government's come up with this new program called the Mercy AI program, and this program basically puts anyone that is accused of murder on this trial, and you have 90 minutes to prove your innocence by accessing all the different feeds and all the different resources that you have in the 90-minute time frame. But the one kind of a biggest element to this whole program is that you are being tried by an AI judge, right? So an AI judge that is not biased, that is basing everything on facts and not on emotions or being influenced by anything of that sort. So the concept is basically in 90 minutes, you've got to prove your innocence or you face a death penalty. Chris has been such a great actor to work with. I think it's very easy to work with. He comes in prepared, he just jumps, kind of throws himself into the scene and tries improvising a couple of times and before he gets it right. And I think that we've been very, very blessed with having such a great experience working with him, because it's not an easy shoot, right? It's a very unique shoot. We've shot the movie in kind of 2 different sections. We had a 7-day shoot of Chris basically sitting on the chair. And we were having them all do 70 pages a day, right? When 70 pages a day is basically 1 hour long takes. And you have to keep that same emotion, and not even emotions, like emotions are changing throughout the movie, and you're having him act that all in real time, basically, right? And the movie is 95 minutes long. We had an hour take long of Chris and Rebecca Ferguson basically playing against each other. So you can imagine how tiring that could be for them to be able to, and also, when you look at the way Chris's production approach was done, he was sitting on a chair, he had 2 earpieces, one is feeding him lines, another one had music playing for him to kind of get into the scene, and then we had him reacting to screens that were flying his way. So we prepped all the screens in advance, so that way he can be able to, see, okay, screen's coming from this side, from that side, this is what I need to react to, this is the murder crime scene footage, or this is the different evidence, right? So we had that as a guide to him, but he had to, he had to basically multitask between listening to the music, listening to what the lines are being fed, and also keep track of what is being thrown at him, as well as talking to Rebecca, who's sitting on the other stage. So it's definitely been, having such an approach has definitely been really, really easy and great to work with Chris. Rebecca's performance has been obviously definitely phenomenal, because it's not easy to play such a role and not have, or try to kind of block your emotions from it, right? And I think that was a big conversation we had in the beginning, as far as how much emotions does she need to have? Do we want to have an arc to show, emotions being transitioned throughout the story, right? And obviously, we just went down the path of, okay, no, we need to have a stoic type of a character who is not influenced by such thing, right? Given the real-time approach of our movie as well. But I think, it was definitely tough to get get that interaction between her and Chris, and for her to not react to what Chris' emotions are, right? Because Chris's emotions are kind of going up and down throughout the movie, and she needs to kind of block all of that and just keep focusing on being, a stoic AI robot, right? And one of the things that we did to help Rebecca in that, right, was Rebecca really did not want to see Chris in real time, right? So she would hear him, but she would see nothing except the camera, because her set was obviously very, very minimal, right? She did everything on a blue screen, and she had a teleprompter in front of her, and I think when you look at how long she had to do all these takes as well, like Chris, you have 60, 70 minutes of you just going through the movie and trying to control yourself by not, having emotions slip, right? And it's not just from a facial emotions, facial expressions, but it's also like the head turns and the head tilts, things like that that you have to be very mindful of, and things you don't think about whenever you're, trying to reenact how an AI robot would act. I think it's from one side is the thematic experience, right? Is the conversation we're having every day about AI, about the danger of AI, about where this world is going towards, right? And I think this is such an important topic to talk about, right? And most movies we've seen so far have been mostly about AI against humans. It's never been how can we work together with AI, right? And I think this movie obviously doesn't start that way, but it ends that way, right? Ends with the realization that this is what we all need to do to be able to coexist.
Well, I read that AI judges and AI courts were a thing. They weren't real yet, but they were really being developed. And as soon as I read that, I just knew there's got to be a movie in this. And I actually saw the opportunity to bring back a genre that I missed seeing in theaters, which is the courtroom drama or the courtroom thriller. And that had its heyday, I think maybe in the 90s with A Few Good Men and stuff like that. But then TV kind of took over, and we had so many legal dramas on television that there wasn't really call for it in movie theaters. But as soon as I saw that there was a science fiction version of a courtroom thriller available to me, I just had to jump in and write it. The thing about AI that really interested me was the idea of control. And I think it applies to all technology, really. How much control we're going to give over to something that isn't human, that could end up having a huge say in our lives. And that's the thing I really wanted to explore with Mercy, where we have literally a life and death decision, a decision about a human being's life being made by an AI. And I think as AI has permeated society more, we're seeing big decisions about people's lives being made by AI already, whether it's a job application being vetted by an AI algorithm and maybe dismissed and losing somebody the opportunity, or whether it's an insurance claim for healthcare perhaps being dismissed the same way and not being covered, all because an algorithm says so. So I think we're already seeing AI impact human lives, and with Mercy I just took that to the next level and quite literally put a human life on the line in a capital trial. But I don't think the science fiction is too far from science fact that we're already seeing. Our director is Timur Bekmambetov, who is without question one of the most interesting and imaginative people I have ever met inside this industry or outside of it. I think he lives on a slightly different plane of consciousness to the rest of us, where things are just more creative, people are more interesting, the world is more interesting. So bringing him to bear on any movie is a huge benefit to the storytelling. But Timur is also the godfather of this screen life format. He's the guy who produced or directed the early movies that blazed the trail for screen life. And so having him come in to direct this evolution of screen life, this hybrid of screen life and traditional filmmaking, there couldn't be anybody better for the job. It's like hiring Michelangelo to come in and paint your apartment ceiling. He's just the right guy to do it. The world Mercy is set in is the very near future. So it's, I think, a very familiar world. It's just things that we're aware of today have been amplified. So on a social level, there's extremely high unemployment, extremely high homelessness, and extremely high crime rates, skyrocketing crime rates. And while I'm not predicting that that's the future for America, these are things that we are very much talking about and hearing about frequently in the news now. So I don't think there's anything about the world that will feel like it's suddenly in some sort of far-flung future. I think it's a really grounded, believable world that we can all relate to and we can all imagine living in. And on the technology level, I think the biggest thing is that we have an AI court and an AI judge powered by a quantum supercomputer. And these, again, are things we have. We have quantum computers in development. We have AI that is capable of reasoning and processing a lot of data. So I think although the idea of a capital court run by an AI is a big leap in people's minds and imaginations, it's actually not very far away from the technology and the AI we're dealing with right now every day. Chris Raven is an LAPD homicide detective, and he is a good cop. He believes so, and if you asked anyone around him, his colleagues, his friends, they would all say the same thing. The problem is that that's Chris's identity. He builds himself entirely around being a good cop, and that means that other things in life, like his marriage, his role as a father, kind of take a back seat. And it means that Chris is maybe too obsessed with work and not focused enough on his family and too driven to bring suspects before the mercy court. The story begins with a very big shock for Chris Raven because he wakes up in the mercy court, strapped into the execution chair, and discovers that this isn't a joke, nobody's pranking him, this is real. He is on trial and his life is on the line. And he's the guy who has been, as a homicide detective, delivering people, delivering suspects to mercy. So he's the poster boy for this operation. The last thing he expects is to find himself in that chair. But things only get worse when the judge reveals what he's there for, which is that he's accused of murdering his wife. And on the surface, when you look at the evidence and when the judge processes it, it seems to be an open and shut case. At first, I honestly didn't know how I was going to write an AI character, because you have preconceptions about cold, soulless machines speaking with robotic voices. But as soon as I started writing, I realized that actually it didn't need to be that way, and that there was going to be so much more to her than people might imagine. And in fact, I was able to write her very much like I would write a person. It was like writing a slightly naive person, not very worldly, who hasn't experienced life very much, but who's also a genius. So a super smart person who's not really been out in the world very much. And there are real people like that. So I found that I was actually able to write her very much like I would any other character and build a relationship between her and Chris, very much like I'd build a relationship between any two characters. It just so happens that beneath the surface, she's ultimately a computer. But I don't think that affects her character or her personality or how audiences are going to connect with her. There are two things in every mercy trial that the accused person is constantly reminded of. There's a countdown clock that tells them how many minutes and seconds they have left to live before their execution, and there is a guilt percentage that shows their probability of guilt. And the judge works this out in milliseconds at the very beginning of the trial. And if you are above a certain threshold, that means your probability of guilt is high enough that you're going to be executed at the end of the trial. If you go down, if your probability of guilt percentage drops, you get closer and closer to proving yourself, if not innocent, at least proving that there's a reasonable doubt and escaping the execution. So Chris gets to sit there staring constantly at this guilt percentage, which means life or death, and it's bumping up and bumping down and bumping up and bumping down throughout the trial every time he finds a new piece of evidence, a new avenue of investigation, a new potential suspect. So it's a constant fight to get this down low enough to survive and save his life. And it's just one of the things that will help keep the audience immersed in the story and really put them in Chris's shoes, because that guilt percentage along with the ticking clock are going to be on screen for them the whole way through the movie as well. And they'll get to experience what Chris experiences from his point of view as he fights for his life.
Mercy, takes inspiration from films like RoboCop or Minority Report, where you have a near future dystopia, and I think everyone in the US or anywhere right now, for example, relates to the homelessness epidemic. And so in our film, you see scenes just like you do in RoboCop from 40 years ago, where the homeless situation has gotten so bad that there's whole neighborhoods that the police have just abandoned, that they call red zones, where they've become these lawless, free-for-alls that are so bad that the police can't even go. And so just like in RoboCop, where you imagine this futuristic Detroit, and things have gotten so bad, people have finally said, look, we've got to do something. And so they build these robotic police officers that have machine guns and can just mow down the bad guys. In this version, I would say the more modern spin on that is with all of the information that's available in the cloud, this idea that everyone has cell phones and traffic cams and dash cams and body cams, and that there are cameras everywhere. And because of social media, our whole lives are all being recorded 24/7. And so if somehow you imagined that there was a single central computer or intelligence that had access to all of the filmed footage that existed in the world, you would be able to solve all crimes, because somewhere there's a record of everything. Somewhere there's you can see these moments. And so if you combine those two ideas, if you imagine, hey, take the homeless situation as it exists right now in urban cities in in urban cities like Los Angeles, and project that forward 5 years where it's gotten really bad, you could imagine society saying, you know what? We need to empower our judicial system. We need to create a judge that at least temporarily has access to everything that's happening in the world, and everything that's so that she can quickly and efficiently and fairly try these murderers and criminals, and frankly get rid of them on the spot. And so I think it comes from this the typical fear we have, where you're balancing civil liberties with safety. I think the film by itself would be an exciting future thriller that just deals with, again, near future sci-fi ideas like artificial intelligence, like the ability to use the cloud to solve crimes and have information. So I think you have the classic detective film noir thriller aspects. I mean, literally, you can't get more film noir than a police officer who's on trial for murdering his wife, and we have to figure out, did he really murder his wife? And you add the irony, of course, that police officer is a homicide detective who's hoping to get rid of other people murdering. So that's a very, I would say, classic film noir. And then in this case, we've added that or married that to the idea of a screen life movie, which Timur had produced before, movies like Searching and Missing, where the entire film unfolds on computer screens. And so there were horror movies 20 years ago. There was a whole genre of horror film called found footage movies, like Blair Witch and House of Horror, and these movies where the premise is everything you're watching is real security camera footage that was found. The problem with those is that security cameras, by definition, are very static. The cameras are just mounted up in corners, and so the films, after a little while, people stop believing that they're actual found footage, that this was an actual documentary. That gimmick is kind of up, and then now you're locked into this very static looking frame that just alternates between elevator shots, which can work. It can be fun, but I think the audience moved beyond that. And I think what the Screen Life films do, that it takes that to the next level that's much more interesting, is we've got a lot of moving cameras. We've got a lot of cameras that are mounted to the barrels of rifles and to police officers' helmets and their dash cams, and so there's a lot more movement. There's a lot of frenetic energy from all the camera movement. And then the other thing is we've got multiple screens on at once, whereas in the traditional found footage, you were looking at a single piece, like you would cut from this security camera to the security camera in the elevator to the security camera in the parking garage, and so it was very static. In a Screen Life movie, you've got one frame which is showing your master story, and then Chris and the judge might be she might be pulling up 8 or 9 different feeds, and so you're almost bombarded with information. Even in searching and missing, which were much simpler versions of the story, at any given moment in time, the character might have a Google map open and a FaceTime video open and a QuickTime or a YouTube stream. So you were looking at 3 or 4 images as they're moving around in windows. I think in this movie it's going to take that to another level where you have so many different screens that you're being just bombarded with information, and all those cameras are very fluid and moving. So hopefully it's going to be exciting. I think this will be one of those films that people may end up having to watch 2 or 3 times to really feel like they got everything that was in it and processed all that information. So we're filming a lot of this movie on Amazon's volume, and I had never worked on a volume before. I was familiar with the concept. I've done work where you have projection screens, and of course the idea of rear projection goes back many, many decades. In fact, in the earliest days of studio filmmaking, a lot of driving sequences and stuff, rather than going out on location, where you're dealing with weather and sun issues and all kinds of safety issues, they would throw up a screen and project a car driving, and then the people sitting in a car would go like this. And it had a very fake look to it, but again, the audience, it's part of the language of film. You just realize, okay, when Spencer Tracy is sitting in the car going like this, and you see the scenery zipping behind him, I think audiences knew he wasn't really on the PCH or on a freeway, but you didn't really care. The volume has taken that to a completely different level, where the ability to manipulate the images in real time and compensate for the camera angles and where the camera are. And it really comes from video game technology. Unreal as a video game came out in 1998, and now we're on the 5th generation of that Unreal real-time rendering engine. And so what the volume allows you to do is 2 things. One, you can take a virtual environment, a space that's been completely created like you would for a video game. And so you could have a space station or a cave that dinosaurs are invading, or some planet that doesn't exist. Create that entirely unreal, and then put your actors and your crew in that space where it really looks and feels like you're in that environment, in a way that before you would have done that with green screen. Like the Star Wars Episode 1, 2, and 3, they were filmed in green screen, because of course you can do that work in post. You can film your actors in front of a green screen so that you don't have to rotoscope them, and then just in post put behind them a virtual background. The problem with that is the actors have no sense that that's where they are. And even the crew, it's hard to line up the angles, because when someone's against a green screen, you might pick an angle that's very, very low or very, very high that makes the actor look cool, but then when you go to put the background in place, you realize in post, oh shoot, the way this is framed, the background would actually just be blue sky, or the background would just be the floor. So it's much harder to composite, to compose the image the way you want if the whole world is just a green screen. And so I think what the volume allows you to do is really put the actors and the director and the crew in that real space. You stand inside this room, and it really feels like you're in that planet, so you know exactly how to line up the shot, because you line it up just as you would if you were in the real world, if you were out and this space existed. Shooting inside this volume, even using plates, allows you to switch from one environment to this. Chris Pratt plays the LAPD detective Chris Raven, who is a homicide detective that we learn through the story has been investigating some of the worst murderers in Los Angeles and putting them up for trial in the Maddox system. And so in the Mercy courtroom, Chris Raven has either helped or is single-handedly responsible for over a dozen people that have been convicted and executed for capital crime in Los Angeles. At the beginning of our story, Chris Raven, the detective, wakes up looking completely disheveled and out of sorts, doesn't know where he is, and he realizes that he's sitting inside the Mercy courtroom, strapped into the chair that the same people he has caught have to sit in for their 90-minute trial. And even though the judge is going to explain all this to him and the audience, he knows, because he helped build this system, that he has 90 minutes to convince this AI that he is not guilty of killing his wife, or he will be executed at the end of the 90 minutes. Judge Maddox is an AI judge that is played by Rebecca Ferguson. But to her credit, Rebecca came in and for the first time, I think, really took that role to something else. And she's a sci-fi darling. Of course, people know her from the Dune movies and from Silo, and some even going back to Mission Impossible. So I think she's an immediate fan favorite for anyone who likes science fiction and action and thrillers. But she really is just a genuinely hardworking and talented actress. I mean, she came in, learned just an enormous amount of dialogue, and was a great sport about working in these virtual environments. We shot her against a green screen, we shot her inside the volume, and her whole character is an AI creation, and so it's not easy to, I mean, everyone pretends to act like a robot. It's hard to do that well for 90 minutes, and I think she does a great job with it, including a character that's evolving over time, right? That's starting out completely AI, it's completely artificial and completely just seeming like a program, and throughout the course of the film, we learn that Judge Maddox actually has not deleted her emotion circuits, and like any AI science fiction story, has developed something of a self-conscious and a conscience, and more of that begins to be seen in the film. Timur is one of the more creative directors, I think, working in Hollywood. I think he combines a sensibility that you often see in animation and short form and stop motion, just really outside the box and really about discovery. I think Timur has a dozen new ideas every day, and so if anything, there's a matter of trying to fit that all into a box during the shooting period, and hopefully he'll have plenty of time and resources during post-production to really explore and exploit all these hundreds of hours of footage that we've created and really put together something special. Timur produced, I believe, all of the Screen Life movies that have existed before, including Searching and Missing, so he knows this genre. In fact, I think you could say Timur is one of the pioneers of this genre, but has also done big action and films like Wanted and Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer. I think Timur is someone who has a really interesting background in a wide range of movies, both as a producer and a director. I mean, he produced the movie Hardcore Henry, which is a low-budget, high-speed, high-stakes action movie that I think they shot in Moscow. And so Timur just, again, a bundle of energy and enthusiasm and new ideas. And like I said, almost like an animation director, I think, approaches things. I think Timur also is interested in elevating the story beyond just the story that you see on the page, including introducing ideas about hallucinations and things that he's thinking in as, while he's on trial that were not necessarily on page or in the original script, but take the story in new directions and give the audience something to think about days after they see the film.
One of the special things about Mercy is it has a handful of different genres. It has this really unique kind of found footage element to it. There's great action, and I'm a giant science fiction junkie, and this has a ton of it. I mean, it's pretty amazing where we are in this world today with technology and the advancements of artificial intelligence and kind of how that lines up with our movie. And, when reading Marco's script and also kind of saw this, unique way of blending it with, the judicial system and kind of turning the head on a conventional law and order kind of story. One of the special things about it is in our world, in our judicial system, you are innocent until proven guilty. And this completely flips it on its head, and Chris is guilty and has to prove his innocence. So it's a really unique way and commentary on that kind of world. Timur Bekmambetov, with my relationship with him, he has the biggest passion for just screens. It's pretty remarkable on, how much he cares about the digital world and where it is today. And because of what he's kind of brought to his screen life genre, I felt, the Mercy concept fit very well in align with, what he's produced with Missing and Searching, and he directed a phenomenal film called Profile. And, this felt like those were all grounded in reality. And what Mercy brought to the table was to kind of elevate it into new genres, into the science fiction world. So I was hoping that he would kind of see that too, and knowing how passionate he is about like the screen life, the digital world, that he would see, where tech is going, where AI is going, that he could find a way to, breathe some special life into this project. So the Mercy Court is really interesting because when there is a capital crime, a murder, all of that evidence is taken and fed into this supercomputer. And there it's able to create a guilt probability. And so if it hits a certain threshold, that will make a Mercy trial happen. And so in our case, in our movie, Chris Raven, all the evidence that's fed into this computer from the crime scene, and this supercomputer is also able to rule out alibis of other people using street cameras or other, unique pieces of technology to where they're able to make a guilt probability that Chris Raven is 97.5% guilty, which automatically triggers this moment where once he comes to, only has 90 minutes to fight for his life, really. When I say he is guilty and has to prove his innocence, this is where, maybe he has the special skills to actually do that and look for the right places that might, show that he didn't do it. Chris Raven is a very talented, dedicated police officer who went through a very, very traumatic experience when his former partner passed away in the line of duty. And the people who killed his partner got off scot-free in a normal, traditional sense. So Chris became an advocate of the Mercy program because he couldn't see another, for sure guilty person get off, a murder trial just scot-free. So he became institutional to this. And what's crazy is because of that relationship to this program, the fact that one day he just wakes up in the Mercy chair, not knowing how he got there, accused of murdering his wife, is a shocking and unsettling thing to him. But given his traumatic experience, he dives into some pretty dark places to where, maybe we'll see some footage or we'll see some story that points us, maybe Chris actually did do it. And that's a really unique thing to go, unique place to go to. Judge Maddox is the supercomputer of all supercomputers. Judge Maddox is everywhere in Los Angeles. It's connected to this thing called the municipal cloud. So because of where the world has gotten to in Los Angeles, now it's kind of more reminiscent of like London, where there's CCTV cameras everywhere, or with your personal devices, you're connected to this cloud that the judge has access to and monitor. And this is a way to help make it safe, that she can rule appropriately and have all the correct facts. These facts are, there's a great quote in the movie where facts are black and white to her. And maybe Chris needs to get to the gray in between to help her realize maybe there's a little bit more. Rebecca is a world-class talent. There is no doubt about it. She's so special. And, you know, Maddox is a unique character to tap into, especially where technology and AI is heading right now. And I wouldn't say there's necessarily a lot of research Rebecca can necessarily do in terms of how an AI would perform as a judge or a setting like this. So I think this is something where Rebecca fully owns and brings to kind of an original point of view and take in terms of interpreting how a supercomputer can be communicating and ruling something in the judicial system. I really hope audiences find an enjoyable thrill ride where they're able to kind of think about artificial intelligence in a different way.
It's all started long time, like 15 years ago, when I suddenly understood that I'm spending half of my time in front of computer screen, and I live in two realities at the same time. Half it's physical world, and half it's a world of windows, buttons, clicks, messages, and I asked myself, why we are not telling stories about it? Why it's not we're not paying attention to this part of our life? And finally, we asked my assistant, Nelson Griff, at that time, and I said, can we just write the script about the story happening 100% on screen? It was, of course, it was very extreme approach, but it was just interesting for me to provoke Nelson and myself to refuse traditional film language and just to try to tell stories using the language we never spoke before. And he wrote the script, we made a movie. Another friend, Leo Gabriadze, he directed it, and we all together, we made a movie, and the movie was Unfriended. And then we made a second movie. It was Searching, with a young filmmaker, Anisha Gandhi, and his partner, producer, Sef Akhanyan, and it became an even bigger event, even bigger hit, and was released theatrically by Sony. And I would think, oh, now people will understand it's not just one or two. It's a new type of cinema, but still it was an issue to convince executives, different studios, to help us to release. It's not about production, because the cost of the production is very minimal. It's about possibility to release these movies theatrically. People ask me, what do you think that that somebody wants to see computer screen on a big screen in the theater? And I said, yes, people want to see it. It's the only way to understand that how much this world important for us. I love the aesthetic. I love buttons. I love the design. I love the. It's very relatable for me. Very emotional. And since then, we made, I don't know, 20, 30 movies of this type. We call it Screen Life. Just movies takes place on computer screen. And every movie is different because every time, every director, every writer, every changing the language. It's the same idea, but it's very different. You really feel it's a different person who made it. And also, the Screen Life has a different formats. It could be features, it could be shows, like on Snapchat. We produced a show called Dead of Night. It was one of the most popular shows on Snapchat. It could be documentary, it could be comedy, it could be fantasy, it could be sci-fi. I liked this story, and that just the question was, it was not screen life, it was kind of traditional movie, but it was clear that it could be a screen life movie, because investigation AI, it should be on the screen, on the computer screen or somewhere. And then Majd Nassif, he worked, a young filmmaker, he brave and very smart. He took the lead and he helped me to develop this project. And finally, then we presented to Chuck, and Chuck Roven joined the team, and with Atlas Entertainment, and I decided to go to Chris Pratt, who was in my first movie, Wanted, and he liked the script, and then we went to Amazon, and Amazon liked the script and liked the approach. And I think it'll be something new. It'll be a new approach of the screen life language, because it's a near future and screens are different, and and how we behave, how we interact with screens, and how screens organized, and it's all new, it's all invented. And we have a great Alex McDowell, production designer, and he helped me to develop the language of the movie with a very talented UI UX designer, Alex Bistrov. He created the architecture of the screens, and this little by little it became a real movie. Screen life requires very believable performances, very grounded storytelling, because we know this language, we know this world, the digital, much better than physical world. And in the screen life, it's people, we are very, very we know this world so much, we feel this world so much, that we really feel every mistake. It's why the screen life requires more grounded, more realistic performances, and the very believable lighting, because you cannot just light the character because it looks better. It should be real. Also, screen life requires camera work, because in a screen life, the cameraman is a character, because usually it's a phone or computer, but character makes decision how to put camera. Is it enough light on my face, or I want to be in a shadow, or I want to point direction different direction because it will look real, and training, talking, directing the movie. It's not with directing the movie and working with the actor. It's the same time I'm directing cameraman, because it's a way how you had the shaky, or you're trying to look good, or you don't care about it. And this is a very different different approach. Chris, I know him since wanted, and it was a pleasure to meet him again and work together with him again. All cast was great. I worked with the people I know. I worked with Alex McDowell, who was my friend for many years, and Rumin Javadi, who's an unbelievable composer who understood the tone of the story. But the secret is it was short. The post-production took a year, but production was quite condensed. It's a very intense thriller, detective story, and I'm sure they will be with Chris Pratt on the ride, trying to survive and protect himself and his daughter and his and the world. I think it's just a very entertaining, serious, impactful subject.